now you have your template, but except for some settings and for the project browser, it is kinda empty. Let's talk about where you should store the contents you will use daily. If you're new here, hi, I'm Chris Hansen, the Saturday Architect, and I help architects and engineers work more efficiently and enjoy their work more. Let's get directly into Revit and take a quick look at the library file I've made and some most crucial parts that I include in it. Now that we're here in the library file, where do we start? When you're creating your library file, something you might want to keep in mind as a basic checklist, which literally is what it is, the Transfer Project Standards menu gives you a good idea of parts to possibly keep inside of your library file, if not in your template file itself. So let's take a look at that menu. First, you'll want to go to the Manage tab, which is right here. Then you'll want to go to this part right here, which may be larger or smaller depending on your screen size. Click on this, and you'll see this menu pop up. Now, this won't pop up unless you have a second project file open. This is the whole point of this menu, to send an entire class of information from one file to another. Here in this menu, there are many items, a long list, and let's just take a look at this. I won't go through the entire list, but let's scroll through it one time to see that it is quite a long list. And keep in mind, each of these items is an entire class of information. So for example, just one item contains all of your text types, and just another item contains all of your floor types or fill patterns. So each line here represents a lot of information, potentially many hundreds of items within it, many types, for example, you might have for floor types or wall types. I only usually transfer individual items rather than entire sets of information. So this menu is for the latter, and transferring entire sets of information. All right, let's get out of this menu. Now let's talk about the 4 main things I use this library file for. First of all, we have loadable families. These you can find in the project browser down here. Actually, in these more recent versions of Revit, you can go to the Families tab, and you can see I've got the doors category open right now, which is a loadable family category anyway. And there are plenty of others. There's detail items and generic models, lighting devices. A lot of these are loadable family categories. Generally, you don't want to bloat a file with all of your families loaded into it, not even the library file. So in this case, I have common families that I use in this file. More families loaded in here than I do in the template file. But I still don't want to bloat the library file, so one nice thing about loadable families is you can store them outside of the file that you're using in Revit, whether that's a library file or the file for the project you're working on. This is nice because families have a significant file size in the, several megabytes usually, sometimes only a couple megabytes if they're simple families, or maybe even just kilobytes. But when you multiply that by hundreds or thousands, which is pretty common when you build up a nice sized library of families, this can easily bloat the file size itself of the project file that the families are stored in. It can also make for really long lists. So if you were to open annotation symbols or something and scroll down, there's a lot of these, for example. You can load in most of those. You can make the project browser really bloated, and that's not great for using day to day. It's not fun to have to scroll through a seemingly endless list. So keeping the list as short as you can while also having the common files loaded in, that's a good idea. So that's loadable families. I suggest keeping those on your server or a cloud storage platform. This is a valuable treasury that you want to make sure you always have access to and that does not get destroyed. After loadable families, there's also system families. These, in contrast to loadable families, are stored within the project file itself. This means that you can use Transfer Project Standards to bring over your entire library of types for your system families. So going back in there again, let's go to the menu again. You'll see there is right here floor types. I think if I scroll up, I'll also find ceiling types. Then we'll have R for roof types and W for wall types. So there are many different system families built in here. Bring system families from the library file itself, because they're not stored anywhere else, and put them into a project that you want to use them in. You can do this through transfer project standards to bring the entire set over, but if you have, 50, 60, 100 plus different types, you might not want to bring the entire set over. Let's say you're working on a residential project and you have a whole library full of commercial, residential, industrial, and other kind of building types. You don't want to bring all of those different floors, walls, ceilings from the building types you're not dealing with into your residential project. What you can do then is go to the project browser right here, and let's say you want to bring some wall types over. Well, here I have a list of quite a few different wall types. Let's say I just want to bring some wood framing wall types over. Let's just say I want to bring these over. Well, what I can do is select all these. So I just clicked one, held shift, and then clicked the bottom of the list. I can do Control C. I just did that, so now they're on my clipboard, and I can go to my recipient project, which I have one open here as an example. Then I can click Control V somewhere in the actual view window, and that is going to paste those types in. You could see my mouse do its little busy thinking thing, and then let's go to the Families tab. Let's look under the wall types, because in my template file, which I just spawned this from, I have 2 wall types. That's it, just a couple generic wall types. Now, I have more than that. I have those 2 generic wall types plus all the types I copied over. So that's how you do it if you want to bring a selection over. It's pretty simple. Another way I make major use of my library file is to hold drafting views. This is similar to system families, where drafting views have to live within the project file itself. They are not separate files stored somewhere else. These live in the project browser specifically, so let's take a look at that. You can see in my views portion of the project browser, I've categorized it for different design phases, and within the CD phase, I have some drafting views. So first I've got some assembly types, quite a few. These are for wall, floor, ceiling, roof types, stuff like that. Just diagrams of those to have at the ready to bring into a project as needed. I've also got detail views with various different details as I build up my library. I've got the map, I'm pretty sure it just has one, and info, Z info to keep it at the bottom of the list. This has some views that I also use, largely text, fill in the blank stuff like that. So you can see I've got quite a few drafting views already put into the library file. This is so that I can bring them in when I need them to the template file. Some of them I have stored in the template file because I use them so often, mainly the Z info views. But most of these detail views I keep here in the library file only and not in the template file. You can copy views from one file to another through the Insert Views from File tool. That's going to be in your Insert tab, and it could be in various places depending on the version of Revit you're using. And then Insert from File and Insert Views from File. And this will bring you to a dialog box which will guide you through the steps to first find the file you want to bring the files from. So in this case, I don't have the right file open. I should actually be in the recipient file. And then go there, go to Insert from File, Insert Views from File. Then I will navigate to the library file, wherever you have that stored in your case. And that is telling Revit you want to bring views from that library file into whichever file you have open when you started the tool. This is a really simple way to import drafting views. That is the use of this for mainly 2D views. Think of it that way. The final major portion of my library file is view templates. I've made a big deal about these before, and I'm going to again. They are so powerful. I store these in the Revit library file. I have quite a few view templates, and I'll show you them here. I'll go to the Manage tab, I believe. Nope, just kidding. View tab, View Templates, and Manage View Templates. If you look at this list on the left, you can see it's not short. These are very powerful. They also take quite a while to make, but I've talked about that briefly before, so it's good to have them set up and ready to go for each project that you'll need them in. However, they also can make for a fairly long list that you don't need to deal with in each of your projects. This is a kind of tricky topic because bringing view templates from one file to another is in a sense easy and in another sense kind of difficult. So what I'm going to do is close out of this menu and go to Transfer Project Standards once again. And just like we've seen in a lot of other classes, you'll find near the bottom, View Templates. This is how you can bring all of your view templates from your library file into a project file. I recommend this if you are not going to use Dynamo. And that's because there is no way to directly bring view templates from one file into another, like there was with drafting views or system families, for example. Generally, the process for the Dynamo script you would use is select the view templates that you want to bring from your library file into the recipient project file. Copy them to your clipboard because, yes, view templates are views, therefore each has its own GUID, and you can copy them to the clipboard. And 3, this is outside of the Dynamo script, so that's really the two uses, or the two steps in the Dynamo script. You would run that script, and then the third step you would do is in the recipient project file, in our case, in this file itself, somewhere in the view window, you would simply type Control-V to paste the view templates into the recipient project file. That is how Dynamo makes taking a selection of view templates and bringing them into another file easy. But you need to know how to use Dynamo well enough to do that. So that's outside of the scope of this video, but I want to mention it because it does make bringing certain, but not all, view templates into another project file possible. Whereas natively in Revit, it's not. Those are the main uses I have for a Revit library file. It is very powerful to have and very valuable for when you are working on projects because you can just pull information from it and put that information into the project you're working on. The library file is your stock of ammunition, ready to deploy when you need it. It is also your vault of valuable information, where you keep the decisions and content you have made in the past so you can use them in projects you make without having to remake those decisions and remake the content. Do you have other uses for a library file in Revit? I'd love to hear them in the comments below. Until next time, take care.